Go back, I wrote week 5 in the description, and I was like, no, it's not really, is it? I had to go and actually look at my paper diary and check, is it really week 5? It's really week 5. So first week of 11 a.m. practice, which is really different for me. Thank you for joining. So for anybody new who's just joining me today, obviously, even though it looks like I'm talking to you, I don't know who you are and I can't see you. So basically just bear in mind that, of course, there are like health and safety reasons why it's really important that you only do what you're comfortable doing and you're in charge of your own well-being. But beyond that, this is a very hybrid practice. I'm drawing on a lot of different methodologies and doing loads of my own stuff. I'm always, Feldenkrais is kind of the biggest influence because it's the most functional and the most complex and the most applicable. But I'm always just drawing on lots of different things and really kind of creating a framework. It's improvised every day. I might have an idea of what I need, but it's really responsive to my needs, and I'm trying to offer something a bit varied each day. And yeah, it really works best if you can only do what is really enjoyable and pleasurable for you. So that's what I'm always trying to do. So as much as a training in movement and as much as being something to do with being kind of well-being for the body, it's also a training in awareness and learning to listen to our own bodies and relate to them in a kind of curious and gentle and respectful way rather than like forcing anything. So don't look to me as giving a perfect example. I've got all my own stuff going on. Everybody does. All teachers have their bias. So this is a structure that I provide around which you are invited to play along with me, basically. So one of the kind of easiest things I feel, just as a quick example, is if for example, I'm spending quite a bit of time around something that looks like a press-up position, but I'm not actually doing any press-ups, and you think, I want to get a bit more hardcore in my training, you can just go for the press-ups, just do what you want. Equally, if I'm doing some press-ups and you think, that doesn't feel good for me, that's just not what I need right now, that's not helpful for me, then just don't do it. So, this is kind of a score, follow along, do what you want, rest when you want, stop when you want, push further when you want, chill out when you want, etc. Anyway, that's a lot of chat. Just aware that there are new people today, so a little more of an introduction. I'll talk in the first person, so just to make it kind of extra clear that it's me talking through my experience, and then me talking through my experience acts as a kind of guide for you to do the same thing. Hopefully for a lot of it you won't need to look at the screen, but the screen is there if you need to just see what I'm up to. Okay, thanks so much. I'm going to start lying down. And it's the morning, so the light is so different in here, so the light's going to change a lot over this hour or so. So we have about 45 minutes now. And I'm just lying down. Starting lying on my back with my arms and legs long because that's comfy for me. I'm comfy, I'm on a nice kind of carpet and with a blanket on top. So that's an important element of what makes me comfortable. I wouldn't want to be on a hard floor and feeling bony. So I can use the ground, I can use the support from the ground to help me just let go of things. And also to help me notice what I'm able to let go of and what I'm not able to let go of. So where do I feel any kind of holding myself away from the ground? Where do I feel any tension? And then I'm also using the wonderful ground as a kind of reference point. So I compare my relationship to the ground. I assess my relationship to the ground right now, using my contact with the ground to help me understand a little bit more about my self-organization, my alignment at this moment in time. And I'm not trying to lie in any specific way. I've just got my arms and legs long because then I have this kind of reference shape. But I'm just lying with as little effort as possible, not worrying about correcting alignment or anything like that, but just entering into this phase for this chunk of time where it doesn't matter that I'm wonky, it doesn't matter that I'm not symmetrical. I'm just acknowledging all of that and switching to a sort of observer. I'm just able to observe myself without judging, or at least that's what I'm aiming for. So I notice my breathing. I notice which parts of myself my breathing moves. And I notice my contact against the ground. I'll just be a little bit more clear and intentional about it. So I'm going to start from my heels or my feet, and I'm going to notice how my heels or my feet are in contact with the ground. So for me, just the contact of the feet against the floor gives me a really clear idea about some difference between my two sides. I feel my left heel against the ground, and I actually feel the whole outer edge of my right foot against the ground. So there's quite a clear difference between my two sides. Sometimes the difference is much less. Sometimes I can feel both the back of both heels, but just with a slight difference in terms of where the pressure is. So I can notice which direction my toes are pointing in as well, and I can notice how pointed or flexed each foot is, how much of a crease I have in my ankle, how much of a bend in my ankle. All of these things just give me a bit more knowledge about myself at this moment in time. And then I'm tracing up through my body, listening to my contact with the ground, comparing the left and right, because that comparison is just helpful in noticing difference. So I can learn more about myself by noticing difference. I go up, noticing the contact with the lower leg, and then getting to the knee, I notice how bent or straight each knee is. I notice the direction the kneecap is pointing on each side, and I notice the size and shape of the gap underneath each knee. And then I trace up in my mind's eye, up through the upper leg, noticing the shape, the volume, the line that the leg creates in the space, so the direction of each leg. And also just the sort of vague sensations, like does one leg feel kind of bigger or smaller, chunkier or lighter or heavier, or somehow just more present, more familiar. I go to my pelvis and I assess, can I sense the orientation of the pelvis in space? So listening to how my pelvis is in contact with the ground, I learn a little bit about how my pelvis is aligned at the moment. I can feel a little bit more weight
if I think of the pelvis as a kind of rectangular shape, slightly, I can feel the sort of bottom right hand corner is a little bit closer towards the ground. So I know I'm slightly tilted to the right and down. I'm slightly twisted through the pelvis. I know that because I can feel where the pressure is against the ground, and I can also feel a sense of openness or strain in the front of the hips. So for me there's always a little bit of strain on one side, on the front of the hip, to do with my psoas on the right hand side. But that's really specific to me, so I'm just sometimes it's really easy for me to go into just the first person. Sometimes I find I'm teaching by accident, so I keep like wanting to talk to camera and teach. Just acknowledge that. I'm just going to bend my knees and stand my feet. And notice how that changes the back of my pelvis, the orientation of my pelvis in space, the relationship of my pelvis to the ground. I feel with my feet standing, personally, my pelvis gets a little bit more even. I'm not trying to have my feet anywhere in particular, anything correct. I just stand my feet and let them be wherever it's comfortable. I just notice that that's a slightly different alignment of the pelvis then. And then I lengthen my legs again. And I just keep scanning up through the lower back. I try to get an idea of the architecture of my lower back. How that relates to the front of my body, the belly, my depth, the distance between the front and back of my body. Scanning up past my belly to my waistline, my low ribs, the back of the waistline that comes away from the ground, the low ribs at the back, that's the area of the diaphragm. Using my contact with the ground again, where do I come into contact with the ground? In the mid or upper back, or around the shoulders? Again, comparing the left and right sides to give me a sense of my alignment. Feeling now how my shoulder blades make contact with the floor, how that's different left and right. Just sensing how my arms are lying on the ground, how my hands are lying, how bent or straight my elbows are, how close or far from my body my arms are on the ground. Sometimes just noticing something allows a little change, a little release, without me really doing anything. And I come back up through the arms, to the shoulders, to the neck, getting a sense of the width of the shoulders, the length of the neck on either side. The length of the neck on either side tells me how high or low a little bit my shoulders are in relation to my ears. And then I just notice the contact of the back of the head on the ground, and I open my eyes and I notice, where is my gaze? So for me, my gaze is a little down towards my nose. It would be more of an effort for me to look straight up at the ceiling. So instead, when I'm relaxing my eyes are just looking a little down. I look up and down a little bit so I can feel the back of my head on the ground, sliding up and down. And as I do that, I'm just practicing this kind of expansive awareness so that I can feel the back of my head sliding. My intention is this very minute sliding up and down of the back of the head, which means my head is nodding a little bit, my nose is going slightly up and down, my eyes are going slightly up and down. But at the same time, I'm allowing this kind of expansive awareness to sense there's a little bit of movement in my chest as well. Can I feel any movement anywhere else, maybe in my shoulders or my belly? Can I soften my jaw? Can I relax my tongue? And then I let that go. And I just roll my head a tiny little bit side to side, just to notice how easy is it, how possible is it to roll my head one way or the other. These are just fascinating little tests which vary day to day. So a lot of last week I was able to roll my head to the left, and now my head is going easily to the right. Whereas to go to the left, I would have to push past a little grain of resistance, and I'm not going to do that. So all the time, I'm only doing what's possible without any pushing, without any strain. And gradually more and more is going to become possible within this range of rest, relaxation, pleasure. No strain. I just let that go. And then I bend my feet again, bend my knees again, stand my feet. Check in a little bit with the whole contact to the back of my torso, feel how that's changed. And I'll come back to nodding my head a little up and down. And again, with this small movement, I just feel, does it have any effect on the rest of my body? And I just pause, I rest a moment. Just shuffle on the ground, I make myself a little bit more comfortable. My alignment is changing, so I just have a little stretch and I just make sure that I'm comfy. And I place myself back into that basic position with my knees bent, my feet on the floor, my arms down by my side. And then I'll come back to nodding the head. So I'm going to intentionally now nod the head. I'm going to place one hand on my low belly, so little finger just at the top of the pubic bone, spreading out my hands so that my thumb is kind of just above my belly button. And then the other hand, little finger is touching the thumb, and then the thumb goes up towards, I can feel it on my breastbone. So this contact, this spread out contact of my hands with my torso gives me a feeling of the alignment of my torso in the front of my body. For me, that's easy with my elbows off the floor. So I just feel that. I feel the distance between my little finger on one hand and my thumb on the other hand. And my fingers spread out. I try to have a soft hands, even though they're spread out. So I'm not creating tension in my hands and shoulders as much as possible. And then I'm going to come back to nodding my head up and down, and I'm going to stop any movement in my torso. So the movement of my head has to be small enough that underneath my hands I can feel, and against the ground also I can feel, there's no change in the alignment of my torso. This requires an awareness, but also a stabilizing, a stopping of movement. So I'm moving my head, which automatically moves my spine, and I'm stopping that movement of the spine in the neck from going down into my torso and affecting the rest of the chain of the spine. So I have to stabilize gently around my ribs and my belly. And then I'm going to release and relax as much as I can through my torso. As I do that, it's possible for me to get my elbows on the ground. And I come back to nodding my head up and down, and I just feel how, if I relax everything, that movement of the head going up and down passes through my spine, and I can feel my chest lowering and lifting. I can feel the back of my shoulders and the back of my upper back rounding slightly, and then the point of contact against the ground, the point of the most pressure against the ground in the back of my body, rolls up and down my ribs a little bit. I can feel the front of my ribs and the back of my ribs opening up in turn. I can feel as my chest sinks, the back of my body opens up around the back of the waistline and the low ribs, and then as my chest lifts, the back of my waistline slightly lifts away from the ground. I'm still trying to do it with as little tension as possible. So I'm doing a really mindful kind of getting to know the spine. And all the time I'm trying to release my jaw, have this kind of global awareness that I'm not carrying tension in my eyes, in my hip joints, I don't want unnecessary tension in my toes, my feet, my adductors, my inner thighs, the front of my shoulders. How can I just be soft? I'm going to keep going just for a little bit longer, and I'm going to change over which hand is on top. So for me, I have my right hand near my pubic bone and my left thumb on my breastbone. So I'm going to change them over so that I've now got my left little finger at the top of my pubic bone, my left thumb goes just above my belly button with my hands spread out, and I've got my little finger connected to the thumb, and then the top thumb is in contact with my breastbone again. I just keep going, so looking up and down, softening through my center. This is really different, it's just bizarre. This tiny change of which hand is where changes the set of the shoulder girdle, and I can feel that this way around, I obviously didn't choose this way around to start with because it was somehow less available to me. So even though I didn't choose intentionally one organization of the hands above the other, I just subconsciously chose the one that was easier for me, and now I find I need to settle into this. I'm just going to take a rest with my hands resting there. I stop the head and I just rest. I'm actually going to lengthen the legs and just leave my hands where they are, resting on the belly and the low chest, upper belly. And then I bend my knees again and I stand my feet. I spread my fingers out again. I look up and down again, and I let the contact in the back of the body change, and I let my belly change and my chest change. I let my breathing change. Oh, finally there's a yawn. So my diaphragm is being affected. I rest again just for a moment. That's a pleasurable settling for me. Then in stillness, I'm just going to lift my elbows off the ground again, spreading my fingers out again, feeling the alignment again, and I want to just do a version again. I'm just slightly letting my belly drop, my low belly drop in towards my spine. So I'm not sucking it in, but I'm just sensing that the belly hollows out a little bit, and I'm letting my belly drop down towards my spine. It's like a letting go with gravity. And I can feel my ribs moving as I breathe. I can feel the lower ribs opening and closing still as I breathe. So then I just gently encourage those ribs down. So they're a little more closed, and I'm coming back to this version of stabilizing. I'm really interested in doing only the minimal effort necessary. I don't want to overwork for no reason. I want to be efficient. So with my hand on my belly and with my hand still in this spread out position, giving me a sense of the length of the front of my body, I use that as a reference, and I engage very gently, just enough abdominal muscles, low belly, very gently drawing in, sinking in, low ribs very gently stabilizing and closing down over my belly. And I can feel my breath just gently moving into the back and sides of my body. And then I come back to looking up and down, and I do that without letting my torso move at all. So I'm being so specific. I am not allowing the movement of the head to change the alignment of the spine. And I can feel as I look up and down that I'm using different abdominals. So depending on where I'm looking, it's really so subtle and sophisticated, this use of the abdominal muscles. I feel as I look up and down, sometimes it's right above my pubic bone, the muscles that I'm using. Other times it's right at the top, underneath my breastbone, that I have to gently keep my ribs closed. And luckily I don't have to think about that, but I can just have my hands there, and my hands help me sense which muscles work when in order to stabilize my torso as I look up and down. And then I just pause Oh, I take a deep breath just because it happened. It came easily. And then I just rest my elbows back down. I feel everything melting into the ground. No effort in my arms. Breathing, letting the breathing come back into the belly or anywhere. Just relaxing as much as I can. Elbows on the floor. Just having a little stretch. Making myself comfortable. And for the last time, with my hands resting on my belly still, looking up and down now and allowing movement to pass through my center. And actually now I feel that less movement passes through naturally. And I have to be more attuned. So there's less arching and rounding of my back, but I can still feel this lovely change of contact with the back of my ribs against the floor as I look up and down. I'm very sensitive to the ribs around the chest, even the ribs just under the collarbone. I can feel my collarbone lifting in relation to my ribs and then going down again. And then I'm just resting completely. I'm going to lengthen my legs. And I'm just going to see, wow, how do I feel now in contact with the ground? So it's really subtle work I'm starting with today. I often do start with this really subtle work, but here we are on a Monday. And I really sense that my contact with the ground has changed already just from that work. And I can't resist just giving an aside to anybody following, just to say that if you're not familiar with all of this awareness work, really don't worry if you don't follow. Just try, and the more you tune in with the body, the more you can become aware of these things, and then this degree of accuracy can help you in any other training that you're doing. So whether you go and do a HIIT class afterwards, or whether you go running, or whether you sit at a desk, or this degree of kind of sophisticated awareness about your own self-organization, your own alignment, how the different parts of yourself relate to each other, that can help you balance your handstand or just make yourself more comfortable while you're doing the washing up, whatever it is. So I feel that through that little series I've released a lot of tension. I'm able to just have a different contact with the blanket now, with the ground. Coming back to that scan, I noticed that the length and direction of the legs has changed, the point of contact with the heel has changed, my sense through the hips has changed. I'm less skewed to the right in the pelvis. I'm a little bit more even through the pelvis, even with my legs long. That's satisfying for me. I'm coming up through the torso, same thing. I feel a little bit more even through the torso, through the shoulders slightly. I come back to looking up and down here, just see how that feels, feeling the back of the head move against the ground. Can I release my tongue, my jaw, my eyes? And I look side to side, rolling my head a little bit. And that's interesting because I can go now equally both ways, but I can't go as far as I could one way before. So I've gained some range in one direction and lost some range in the other direction. But that's fine, that's satisfying for me because it's a bit more even. And then with my eyes open, I just notice, where do my eyes rest now? And actually for me, my eyes are resting now, looking a little bit more towards the ceiling rather than down towards my feet like they were before. So my eyes at rest have changed in relation to my spine changing. Woo, I have a stretch. Just stretch. Arms and legs lengthening, just feeling nice. Warming up to the day. And I just begin a soft rolling from side to side, and there's no right or wrong way to do this. The only guide about how to do it is according to my own comfort. I'm trying to roll and not twist. So the difference is, if I'm rolling, everything goes simultaneously. Everything in my right side goes simultaneously, everything in my left side simultaneously, and then to come back, everything in my left side simultaneously, everything in my right side simultaneously. So there's no rotation in my spine, there's just a rolling of my whole body all at once. This is a very primitive movement. So, primitive meaning developmentally, in terms of sort of evolutionary movement, there isn't rotation through the spine. I'm not twisting, that's more sophisticated. So how can I come back to something really basic? And maybe it's really challenging to do something really basic. All the time I have this global awareness of my whole self, my own state. I rest when I need to. I accept that even though I don't want any twisting in the floor, I'm not perfectly coordinated, so I can sense that sometimes my head goes a little bit before my pelvis, sometimes my shoulders go a little bit ahead, sometimes my pelvis starts. So I'm trying not to initiate in any one place, and I'm trying just to roll with all of myself all at once, but that's not necessarily possible. So I just notice what is possible and make it as smooth and flowing and fluid as possible. And I use this rolling from one side to the other like an invitation to let go, like an invitation to use the floor, an invitation to accept gravity. If we can accept gravity, then we can also become more powerful in relation to it. It becomes a kind of intentional conversation with gravity rather than being at the mercy of gravity and then unconsciously fighting it all the time. How can I let go and just accept the weight of myself melting, melting, melting? And I'm trying different ways of rolling. Sometimes my feet are on the ground. Sometimes my feet are in the air. Sometimes my legs are quite long. My arms are long. All I'm trying to do is roll smoothly and softly and get rid of any falling. So sometimes there's a change in the rhythm, like a whoop, and the weight tips suddenly. But when I can manage to let go of all the weight, then I can get a smooth roll against the ground and there's no sudden change. So I'm just looking for how can I roll, roll, roll. Then I put my feet back on the ground and I just use my feet on the ground and my hands reaching very softly across my body to help me roll side to side but without rolling onto my side. So my head is rolling and the whole length of my spine is rolling. That means my shoulder girdle is rolling, my ribs are rolling, my pelvis is rolling, and my knees and my feet are rolling. But I'm trying to find the easiest, laziest way. My eyes are going with the movement even though I've got my eyes closed. And I just feel myself rolling a bit of weight towards the left side of my body and then a little bit of weight towards the right side of my body, but without going all the way onto my side. So it's a small movement, and then I make it a little bit bigger, I go a little bit further towards my side, but I'm maybe halfway there. And I just play with different sizes of movement. So I'm going to come back now to playing with varying it. Sometimes I go all the way to my side and all the way back past my back to the other side. And then sometimes I go just to my back and then back to one side. And I just roll to one side many times. Just one side and back, one side and back. And then the other side, just once, back to the side I did more. Whee, feeling the difference between the two sides. And then back to the other side. I'm going to go to the side I haven't done so much. Rolling, coming back, rolling, coming back. Different size movements, sometimes almost imperceptible, it's so small, the roll. And then other times bigger, other times all the way over to my side. And then both ways again, really just rolling into the ground. My belly is soft, my jaw is soft. And then I'm going to just lie on my back again. Pause, lengthen my arms down by my side, and then lengthen my legs. And notice my contact with the ground. So I really feel my alignment has changed now. There's been a letting go and a realigning. Somehow I can have more of the sense of the length of my spine, whereas before I was thinking more about my musculature, the shape of my flesh, and my limbs. Now I have more of an awareness of my center. I'm going to take my fingertips, I'm standing my feet again, just so that I'm comfy lying on the ground, and I'm going to take my fingertips, actually I'm going to wiggle my fingertips around, just do a very gentle little articulation of my fingers in space, my wrists, very nice and soft. I just want to let my fingers and wrists be part of my body. I'm reaching my arms in different directions, feeling that the rotation and waving through my hands, feeling that all of this relates to my shoulders and that my shoulders relate to my ribs. I can feel, depending on where my hands are reaching, if they're reaching down, I feel my pectoral muscles, my chest closing a little bit. If I reach my hands up above my head, I feel my pectoral muscles lengthening and opening, my arms out to my side. I can feel the fingertips relating to my center, to my breastbone, to my ribs, to my spine. I just rest for a moment. I'm going to do the same thing with my legs. I'm keeping it basically symmetrical so that, oh no, I changed my mind, I don't have to keep it symmetrical. I just want to feel when I wave my legs around, I'm starting really with the intention of just waking up the toes a little bit. Where are my toes going? Can I get a little bit of movement through my toes like I do with my fingers? I'm actually going to help myself feel that by bringing my hands back up into the air and trying to feel, just finding the sense in my feet as if my feet are like my hands. They are quite like my hands. So looking for all of that movement in all the toes, the length of the toes right the way to the ankle down. The ankle, the rotation of the ankle affects the lower leg, and then the thighs, rotation of the thighs. Just going to lay my arms back down on the ground. I play with sending my legs in different directions, twisting now, twisting and reaching, just sending the stretch in different places, really following. Depending on where my legs go, I feel that I'm using more or less of my abdominal muscles. In some places I really am releasing my abdominal muscles. In other places I can feel them working, shortening. But it's all pleasurable. It's not that I'm working hard or intentionally overworking. I'm just feeling that my center is very alive because of all that awareness that I have, and my center is responsive to where my legs are going. And I get my arms back involved, and I just start to move my arms and legs around in different places, side bending. I could roll to the side again. I could bend, lying flat on my back and bending side to side, or twisting and rolling. side to side, always finding that there are things to bump into, of course, in this home practice. I'm feeling now how the movement of the toes and fingers relates down the arms and legs to the hips and shoulders, and how my torso is affected, and get my head involved so I can lift my head as well. Come back to rolling side to side with my head lifted. I'm really just playing now with where my legs go, where my head goes. Can I roll my contact around on the ground, opening up in different ways? So I'm just going to roll around a little bit, basically. I'm rolling in as many different ways as I can. And depending on how I roll, I can either stay soft and just completely release into the ground, or I can do a little bit more abdominal work. Of course, the more I lift my pelvis and head away from the ground, the more abdominal work I'm doing. And I'm really rolling, rolling, rolling. This is really nice. I just found a really nice roll. I'm kind of like rolling in a circle. My point of contact with the ground is rolling. These are like the sort of like old school teddy bear rolls in gymnastics, except like completely different looking. It is entertaining me, so I'm going to see if I can do it the other way. Not such control the other way. Ooh, it's not so smooth for me the other way. So anyway, I'm just rolling. And for me, because I'm choosing to lift my head off the ground a lot and send my arms and legs away from my centre, so there's a greater lever, there's a greater weight to lift. But I can really feel my centre working. I can feel the musculature. But everything I do, exactly like when I was doing the very basic, very primitive, developmentally evolutionary primitive rolling side to side that I was doing earlier, and everything was soft, and I was trying not to drop or fall, I'm still doing the same thing here, so I'm still not ever falling. I'm just rolling. Except every now and again, of course, you fall, because that's just life. Oh, and I'm rolling, rolling. Find myself up in sitting. And I roll different ways up to sitting. And I roll a little bit forwards and backwards in this nice kind of ball that I can create. And this is a really clear example of needing this gathering of the centre. It's still responsive. I can still feel different abdominals working as I roll. I go back to changing. Can I go roll in a little circle? Up one side of my spine, down the other. A couple of times one way, a couple of times the other way. Wee, wee. I'm done, and my belly feels worked a little bit. And I just lie down again and I rest. I lengthen my arms and legs and I see what's my contact with the floor like. And even though I've worked, I feel my contact with the floor is spread out even more, amazingly. So that's nice for me, because it means, that's a sign for me that when I was working I didn't push to do something strenuous. unnecessarily strenuous. So I've worked my abdominals quite a bit with all of that rolling, lifting my head and pelvis off the ground. And flexion, I've been rounding my spine in order to roll, of course, and flexion. Maintaining a pattern of flexion, but having done that, and I lie down now and I release, and I can feel myself spreading out into the ground and letting go. Able to release my belly, come back to feel myself belly breathing a bit. I feel my arms are making contact with the ground in a different way, so even my hands I feel are in a different contact with the floor. Just going to look up and down a little bit. And look side to side a little bit. Going one way much easier than the other, but it's changed again. Started off going easily to the right, now I'm going easily to the left instead. I'm not even anymore. So I stand my feet. And I just want to do one last bit of rolling. So just get a little bit deeper into the abdominals. Kind of juicy start for the week. I start by just stretching. Stretching anywhere I want. And then I come back to the rolling I was doing earlier, just to remind myself that this can come from softness. It can come from something efficient. So efficient meaning I'm only doing what I need in order to carry out the action. I'm not doing extra. Or at least that's my intention, that's my hope. I'm also accepting that I'm never, certainly never perfect. And from this very soft rolling, I take my head, shoulders, arms and legs off the floor. And I'm actually going to allow myself to arch as well, so I just want to feel, with my head back down, what it's like to arch, to let my belly out, flexing deeply in the hips with my knees up, but arching my bottom, my lower back, my belly, my ribs, arms over my head. Okay, even come up onto the head. And I'm actually going to place my feet down and lift my pelvis. So I just felt like doing that. I'm actually supporting the weight on the crown of my head. But really it's enough just to play with arching a little bit in whatever way. So I feel I did all of that work closing my abdominals, and now I'm able to just lift my pelvis. I'm aware of the contact of my feet with the ground. I'm opening up my arms. I'm pushing and moving my pelvis a little bit. I use my hands on the ground to adjust my head. I can even roll through, with my hands on the ground, I can even roll my head up and down a little bit. I'm not coming into full bridge, I don't want to do that. Well, I'm going to tuck my head again and just push my feet into the floor a little bit. And just feel my glutes working. I even put my hand on my belly in the front of my hips to feel all of that kind of opening up there. Opening up, using my hands to help me open up the front of my hips. Really aware of the contact of my feet with the floor, because that's what is going to look after my knees and give me strength. And I'm moving my pelvis around in different ways, and I do these big circles and shift side to side with my pelvis. And as I do that, I feel the different glutes are really working. So I'm really getting into my glutes. I can feel the muscles burning a little bit in my glutes, but it's just from pushing into the floor, lifting the pelvis. And I want to rest a little bit, so I lay my pelvis down And I bring my knees up over my belly again, very softly. I don't want to go suddenly into anything, so I've been arching my back. I don't want to suddenly round. I've been pushing my hips open. I don't want to suddenly stretch, but I just cross my two legs over in the air, and I get both feet. And I come into a very gentle stretch out of the glutes that I was just using. I'm not interested in going to my maximum stretch. I'm just feeling where can I get my legs? How can I just roll softly through gentle stretches? Can I arch and around my back again? All the juicy, subtle, soft variations of a stretch that you can have if you're not in your maximum, if you're not at your end of range. And for me, I started with my left leg crossed in front of my right, closer to my chest. I just cross my legs the other way, and I reach for both feet, and I cross my legs again, playing with my knees bent. How can I get stretches gently moving through the glutes? And it changes so much. There are just infinite variables. Where's my pelvis? Where's my belly? What's the alignment of my chest? What are my shoulders doing? At what point are my knees crossed? Can I release in the hips? Where's my weight in the back? What's my lower back doing? What are my hip joints doing? How bent or straight is each knee? Are my feet pointed or flexed? Am I head lifting or not? And then from there I uncross and I just come back into the rolling softly, softly, softly letting go. I'm just rolling now, and before I start the abdominal work for the last time, I'm trying to let go again. But this time, as I let go and roll softly, I'm just keeping my awareness focused around my belly. And I'm trying to just sense, not that I'm efforting, not that I'm really pulling in my lower belly, but that I'm just hollowing out, that somehow I'm creating space for the contents of my low belly to sink in towards my spine. When I roll over to my right, I can feel the contents of my belly pour towards the right. When I roll over to my left, I feel the contents of my belly pour towards the floor on the left. But all the time, I'm just focusing on allowing space for my belly so that my belly sinks in towards my spine. I keep doing that, and I lift my arms and legs off the floor. And I'm really trying all the time to just sense my belly dropping down away from my thighs. I spent years with people telling me, don't push your belly out when you're training, like 15 years ago or something ridiculous. Longer, when I was in like really hardcore training. Everybody says, don't push your belly out. And it's really hard to understand, well, what else are you supposed to do? But you can't not do that unless you find a way of creating space for the belly to sink in first. And so I'm just mindfully playing with that a little bit. I take my hands behind my thighs and I keep rolling side to side just a little bit. I feel my lower back, my mid back in contact with the ground in a really lovely way. I lift my head off the floor and I keep rolling just a little to my left and right, still feeling my belly dropping down away from my thighs. Still trying to have my jaw soft. Still feeling my ribs soft against the ground. Still feeling my eyes soft. I'm still not fixing anything. Just being responsive to the weight pouring from one side to the other. And my belly, I can feel my digestion's got going a bit through doing this. I'm waving my legs a little bit so I'm not fixed in my hips or shoulders. But all the time I'm just lowering my head down to rest. All the time releasing in the hips and dropping down the belly towards the spine. I take a big breath and my belly heaves. And then I come up again. I use my thighs to help me come up into a sort of boat shape. And I just play with rolling a little bit around on my pelvis, from my sitting bones to my sacrum. And I'm shifting the weight around, and as I do that, the rotation in my hips changes. I'm staying very alive. I can exaggerate a little bit if I want to, opening and closing the chest, rounding and arching, stirring in the hip joints, maybe crossing the legs again. All the time I'm holding on around the back of my thighs so that I'm taking a little bit of the weight of my upper body with my legs, and that just helps me continue to hollow my belly. And then I roll down again softly, and all of this time I'm just using my legs to help me get up. There's a wide connection from my hands to my thighs, and from my thighs to my hands to my shoulders, with my elbows wide. I'm trying to just play with different ways of coming up and coming down. For anybody who's not used to it, sometimes it's difficult to get past that bit. So it really is just about continuing to play with how the legs relate to the centre. Can you keep bringing the belly in? Scooping the belly. I just do a few very linear, very clearly up and down my spine, straight through the centre. Feeling my body melt into the ground, even at the same time as using all of those abdominals. Nice, smooth, efficient way of working. And then adding in variations again for the last time. Where can I roll? Where can I shift? Oh, right, my side. For a little bit, I just keep holding on around my thighs so that it's clear that this is connected. If I have a closed chain, as long as my hands are holding onto my thighs, it's a closed chain. So anything I do with my legs affects my shoulders and affects all of this stuff in between. The whole centre of the body is affected. I'm just using my legs, lengthening in different ways to help me get up with different rotations through the spine. Finding a little groove. I'm going the other way. I didn't manage. Rested my head down for a second. Swimming with my legs. And then taking my arms away again, and for the last time just moving and rolling through my centre. Sometimes it's not possible, sometimes you send a leg in a direction, you're like, ooh, can't get up there. Find something that feels like hard work in my abs and I repeat it. Very expansive sit up. I'm doing some reps. Whew. I'm going to finish soon. Get rid of tension in my neck and jaw. Keep going. Keep pulling my belly in. Keep my fingers and toes alive. Rocking gently. And a few more. Soft through my legs. And then I'm just going to stop. I completely ran over time. So I just stopped, come up to standing. Just see how I feel in standing. I noticed that I'm standing basically in parallel without any effort. That's not a usual alignment for me. And I have a bounce and I wave my arms and legs around and I move my ribs and spine around and just stay very alive. And let my jaw relax and let my breath in and out. And take a walk, noticing my alignment, noticing anything that just comes to my attention. How do I feel in my whole self? Having a little stretch. And I'm done. Thank you. Thanks for joining. Sorry I ran over. Honestly, I just got really into it.
interesting that probably with an 11 a.m. practice, it's gonna have to work even harder to keep it short. So yeah, thanks so much for joining. Share on social media if you can, and get in touch. It's always just so nice to hear from people, whether you want to write publicly or whether you want to just send me a little message privately on Instagram or something. It's really nice.